28 and says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Jesus is saying, look, if you're going to build a tower, you better count the cost to make sure you have enough money to complete it. For if you laid a foundation and are not able to finish, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. He gives another little analogy. I like this. Or suppose a king, verse 31, by the way. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose a person with 20,000 men? Is he not able? If he's not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and he'll ask for terms of peace. In other words, I give up. We can't beat you. So Jesus is using these picture words, and I love this, to explain that Christianity is not easy, and following after me means you better count the cost. It may be the disconnect of your own family. It may be that you will die for your faith. Jesus says this in another part of the gospel. He says, if they hate me, they're going to hate you. But listen to here in the same chapter, chapter 14 of Luke, verse 33. I love this. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciple. Did you get that? When you sign on the dotted line, ladies and gentlemen, when you say yes to Jesus Christ, you're giving him everything you have. That could be the loss of a spouse. That could be a loss of a job. That could be a loss of a home. I'm preaching to you right now, Christian, because I want you to get this. You cannot follow Jesus and not count the cost. Because here's what happens. You are the soil that kills that seed. The world comes in, it snags you away, and you walk away from Jesus Christ. That's all I got for you in Luke 14. So if you decide to follow after Jesus, you better count the cost, man. What if God sends you out to Africa, some of the most remotest tribal areas in the world? Are you going to go? What if he tells you to go talk to that person over there that needs the gospel? He commands you to give the gospel. You going to buckle down and go? Or are you going to buckle up and stay right where you are because you're too afraid? Oh man, too many Christians call themselves Christians. I don't believe for a fact, or for a minute rather, that those who call themselves Christians are automatically Christians just because they say. I believe that people who follow after Jesus in obedience and listen to what he says and are cross-bearing and are self-denied, stated in Luke 9:23, every Christian right now listening to my voice should be memorizing Luke 9:23. It should be your staple verse. More about that later on, I suppose. I got a caller, area code 516. I'm going to bring you on now, but I want to warn you, please do not swear. I'm not sure who this is. This could be one of my friends. Please do not swear. I'm not going to have that on my show. I will cut you out. 516, you're on the air with 1,000,000%. Who's this? Oh, I was just talking about you. I know you are. I was just explaining to my audience that you do, in fact, have a different worldview. Hey, we get along, we have good conversations, and we've certainly partnered up here on the CC Radio Network. And by the way, this is Dr. Mark. He is one of the co-hosts of the radio show on his shows on Monday and Friday, The Rev and The Doc. You can check them out on the CC Radio Network just by going to blogtalkradio.com/CC Radio Network. Dr. Mark, what You are. And they're New Yorkers, so, I'm more afraid to talk to them because they're intimidating. Once you get that New York accent, do something for me, Mark. Just say, are you talking to me? See what I mean? They're just intimidating because of the New York accent. I love it. You got it. What do you got? Yeah, you know a little bit more. Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I've created. Yeah. Well, it's a big problem between them and God. I will still love them as a parent. I would still care for them. But I've made cages for that kind of thing. And I just keep them locked up until they can submit. No, to answer your question, Mark, that's a very good question. Let me clarify a couple things, okay? When Jesus says to forsake all, to follow him, he wasn't implying that we lose our responsibility as parents, as fathers, to go and just drop our family. We are still obligated. Now, he chose specifically these 12 apostles to go follow after them and leave their jobs because he was going to take care of them for 3 years. They would also be the ones just being discipled to start the church. So it was a huge integrating the brand new dispensation going into the church age. This is after Pentecost when they received the Holy Spirit. They went and preached into all the world after that point. You had Paul, you had Peter, all the apostles who eventually died. But as far as their families are concerned, they still were with their families. In fact, Paul, although he didn't have a wife or child, he worked. He was a tent maker, so he had to make a living somehow. And his marriage was really to the church. That's right. That's right. That's right. Which came very handy for them. Absolutely. Well, let me clarify something, Mark. All he told Matthew was, come follow me. He did say in other areas, you can't serve God and manna or money. You can't have those both. And what he's implying there is not that you can't get a job. It's that people will love the one or the other. And I do believe it continues and says that. You're going to love the money more than God. And that's why in Luke 14, it's very, very important to understand what he's talking about. He's not saying, you can't get married, no families, I want you to forsake everything and leave. In fact, what he says, if you read verse 26, it says, if you do not hate them, you can't be my disciple. Wow, I mean, that is some pretty strong language coming out of light, fluffy Jesus, who's supposed to be a lot like Mr. Rogers. Oh, no. Jesus made it very clear. What he said was, you better count the cost. Because see, what happens a lot of time, Mark, and I want to clarify something, and this has happened in a lot of places, even within my own relatives and my friends, they don't want to have much to do with you once you become a Christian. So Jesus is saying, look, you're going to follow after me. The world is going to hate you, and that means your own family. So unless you accept that, you really can't be my disciple. That's all he... Oh, yeah, I remember Debbie Downer. Preachy. Yeah. Well, you know, it does tend to happen. And actually, Jesus promises us. And here's what he says, Mark, to your point. I'm going to quote for you what Jesus says here. Just give me a second here and I'll find it. I'm on my slow app. Go to John. If you go to John chapter 3. Actually, go to John chapter 1. The Word becomes flesh. There was a man, let's see. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent by God. Okay, verse 9, it says, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not even recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those that believed in his name, he gave them the right to become children of God. So in other words, when Jesus himself came into the world, he was a lot like Debbie Downer. In fact, I'm trying to remember if it's prophet Isaiah or if it's prophet Jeremiah. But one of those prophets in the Old Testament, as you know, Mark being Jewish, you know those guys, they called the Messiah the man of sorrows because Jesus grieved over the world. He came to preach repentance and faith in him. He preached the kingdom. Just read Matthew 5 all the way through. He was constantly telling them, Christianity is not the easiest religion in the world. You want to follow after me, here's what it's going to mean. You read, for instance, the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is a picture of what a true Christian is. Well, read the Sermon on the Mount, just the first 10 verses, and here's what it says. Blessed are the mourners. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are persecuted for my name's sake. Whoa, take it easy there, Jesus. I mean, this should be a happy occasion, shouldn't it? Well, Jesus says, of course. Oh, go ahead. That's right, but what did he say before that? Remember the rich man? You remember the rich young ruler came to Jesus? He says, "What? And what was his problem? Yeah, why did he walk away sad? He walked away sad because he possessed much, and because Jesus is reiterating here in chapter 14 of Luke, you cannot love things more than me. You got to count the costs." Now Jesus happened to know, since he's God in flesh, this man's problem. The problem was that Jesus knew that this rich young ruler's problem was his money. And that is what separated him from God. Jesus called him out on it, but before that he gave him kind of a test. But anyway, not too much longer than that. Mark, I want to ask you a question since you're on with me. And by the way, I'm on with Dr. Mark. You can check him out on Mondays and Fridays at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on the Coffee Talk Radio. And, well, it's actually not Coffee Talk. You got to give me your name again because I always mess up that name.